So initially, I prepared my talk for people who work in startups where employee count is between 50 to 100. And my intention was to help people actively facing friction to navigate friction. But today, I'm going to switch my intention to preparing you guys for the friction you're going to face in the next 3 to 5 years of your career. If you see my slide, which I am going to make publicly available to everybody here, it's more like a term paper and less of a presentation. And that's because my intention today is to give you practical examples on the kind of friction you get to face every day at work and how you should navigate it. Now, I've been in this industry for 5 years now, and honestly, the most prominent emotions I've had in the past 5 years has been frustration. So yes, every day of my life, when I start new projects, I'm very excited. I'm very happy at the prospect of working on the project. Then 2 days, 3 days, 10 days into the project, I'm frustrated. Then maybe 15, 20 days into the project, I feel insufficient. I feel like I would probably not be able to achieve the project. And I feel like just handing it over to somebody else on my team. And that's like the common emotions with software engineers and people within the tech ecosystem, which we popularly tag as imposter syndrome. But I'm not going to talk about that today. Now, since we don't have our slides, I'm going to ask the product designers here a very simple question. Have you ever had a very wonderful, divine UI that you made, shipped to the front-end guys, and only for you to see the implementation of your UI, like something that was done in motion? Have you had that experience here, product designers? Oh, you have had that experience here. Oh, okay, cool, nice. Okay, so for front-end guys, have you had the experience where you're working on an API, and based on your last conversation with the backend team, you're expecting the API's key to be first name, but when they go back to you, when you were using the API, the key was profile or something else. Front-end guys, have you experienced that before? Okay, so we have experienced it. It means that aside from the friction we face every day interacting with people, we all here face friction at work. As a UI designer, just having a conversation with a front-end engineer that wrongly implemented your design is friction, because you have to have that conversation with the front-end engineer. As a front-end engineer, working with the back-end engineer that didn't write the API contract based on your expectation, you also have to navigate that conversation with the back-end engineer. So that is friction. But I'll give you a more clearer example of friction. I'm going to introduce you guys to two of my friends. One of my friends is Dami. So Dami got a job sometime last year with a company. She's a backend engineer, and she's been doing her work. She's been doing very, very great stuff. She's been pushing through the limits. She has been excelling. But sometimes last month, she felt like she deserves the promotion. She should probably even get like a change in responsibility. So that was what was on Dami's mind. But because Dami's company grew from about 10 employees to about 50 employees to 100 employees within a year, they don't yet have a defined process to handle that conversation. So in a sense, Dami has been doing work, but she wants to get promoted. She wants to have more responsibilities. She's feeling insufficient, but she doesn't know how to have that conversation with her managers, with bosses and stuff like that. Now, another of my friend, an engineer, currently working on an API contract. And so when I mean API contracts, I think I should probably explain for the designers we have in the house. So let's just say an API contract is that point where front-end engineers and back-end engineers get to interact. So an API contract is where they agree on their expectations. Front-end engineers agree on their expectations from the back-end team, and the back-end team admits to the expectations of the front-end team. Are you guys still with me? Oh, okay, good. So my friend, an engineer working at an e-commerce company, realized that there could be an improvement to the API contract. So it could take customers from checking out within 5 seconds to checking out instantly, from 7 minutes to checking out within 3 minutes. So he saw a room for improvement, and he's excited about making that change. He's excited about making the improvements. But unfortunately, after he reached out to the backend team handling the API contracts, he couldn't get heads up. So he couldn't find a way through that friction. The backend team was either unserious, the backend team was busy. The backend team just had like different excuses. And my friend is feeling very frustrated because they saw an opportunity to improve an API contract, and the backend team is limiting them. Are you guys still with me? Do you guys now have an understanding of what I mean by friction? Because most people I met today kept asking me, what do I mean by friction? What do I mean by friction? But you guys have an understanding of what I mean by friction now. Do you? Okay, fine, cool. Now, that's what we face every day in startups. And one of the biggest causes of friction in startups is growth. So you join a company today, and maybe today the company is just making like 1 million naira per month from customers. The company only has like 5,000 customers or so. And in a couple of months, the company grows to having like 10,000 customers, 200,000 customers using their products. And also in that same process, for them to be able to offer value to their customers, they have to grow their employee count. They have to increase their engineering team. They have to increase their product design team. And so this is what happens most times in startups. Like I said, understanding the demography of people here, I'm trying to prepare you for what you would face in the next 2, 3, 4 years when you join a company like Paystack. So maybe right now, you're working in a company where you're just 3 engineers. You're working in a company or you're working on a project with your friends. When you join a company like Paystack, when you join a company like Flutterwave, when you join a company like Google, you're going to be working in a space where you have about 700 employees, where you have about 1,000 employees. And it's not that easy. You can't just walk straight to the CEO. There are processes, there are meetings, there is hierarchy, there is roles, there is responsibilities. Now, I'm trying to prepare you for the friction you would face when you get into those situations. Now, in companies like that, there are usually 2 strategies they use to organize their employee counts. Now, let me give you a picture. So right now, I start writing code. Maybe I'm working with my friend who is a front-end engineer as a back-end engineer. And maybe I'm fortunate, I have a friend who's also a product designer. Then I have a friend who is a PM. Now we're working on a startup project together. We launch, we get funds, we have started a company. Are you guys with me? Now at that point, it's easy. We are in just one room. Our office is literally something like this. So if I need you to do something for me, it's as easy as just talking to you. I can easily carry my system to you to get you to fix an issue I'm having. So basically, in a small startup like that, it's very easy to have conversations. It's very easy to get stuff to happen fast. But when your startup, again, this is your company, it's an e-commerce company, and you're fortunate, you raise your pre-seed funding, or you raise your seed funding, and you employ more employees. So you grow from an employee count of like 5 people, and you become a team of like 70. So how do you handle that growth? What do you do to be able to handle that growth? You don't just have one business using you. You now have all of ShopRite's chain using you. You have everybody in Lagos using your product. So you're having like 100,000 customers using your products. So the typical thing you do is to increase your employee counts. Now, when you increase your employee count to like 50, the next thing that comes to your mind is you start thinking about your products in view of mini products. So who has used an e-commerce site here before? Jumia, Konga, anybody here? Okay, so fine. Now, you know that on an e-commerce site, you have checkouts. You have the product catalog. You also have recommendations, especially if you use Amazon. Amazon is very big on recommendations. So at checkout, Amazon recommends similar products to what you're about to buy. So in companies like that, what you have internally is you have something like a checkout team. You have a catalog team. You have a fulfillment team. You have a product marketing team or a product recommendation team. So you have teams based on sub-features. Now, Spotify actually pushed this model in 2012, but I'm not going to go into the errors of the I'll get to the errors of the model very soon. Now, in those mini teams, you have, within one team called checkouts, you have a product manager, just like when you started your startup, where it was you and your friends, but now you have grown. So you now have multiple startups within one big startup, but their focus now are specific product features within the organization. Now, the reason why companies do this is because it makes it easy for you to employ people fast. So I'll give you an example. Imagine you join Amazon today, or you join Google, because I think people are more conversant with Google. So you join Google today, and you know how complex Google search is. You know how complex Google Map is. And in your first week of joining Google, somebody brings a list of textbooks. So this doesn't happen because most things are in cloud, but let's just make this very visual for us. So you join Google today, then you have let's say a library shelf about Google Maps, another shelf on Google Search, another shelf on Google TensorFlow, and you're joining Google today, and you have to read everything before you can start being productive in Google. How long do you think it will take for you to be productive in Google? forever. So that's why we now have sub-teams. So if you look at Google Maps, you would even have sub-teams within Google Maps. But let's stick to our e-commerce company. So when I join the checkout team, all I need to learn is just checkouts. And that's the benefit of why companies do this. So all I need to understand is how the checkout team is working. All I need to be... Can you guys hear me? Okay, it's back now. Okay, it's good. So all I need to do is to know what's happening within the checkout team. If I join the product recommendation team, I'm mostly joining there with a knowledge of AI. Now, it's easier for companies to onboard employees. It's easier for companies to have employees move fast when they have these sub-teams. Also, it's easier for companies to hire employees because it's now easy for you to sell to employees what they'll be working, to candidates what they'll be working on. So if I have like experience in machine learning, and I'm joining an e-commerce team, I'll most likely be going to the product recommendation system because I would be using AI and machine learning there. But if I'm a back-end engineer, I'll most likely go to checkouts. Now, if I'm a UX designer and I really like designs, I really want to play around designs and stuff, I might not go work with the catalog team. I might go work with the internal team working on like fulfillment and stuff like that for internal teams because there might be more rapid changes there. So the idea that it's easier. Having this, we call this cross-functional vertical teams. So what I just explained is cross-functional vertical teams, where you have vertical teams focused on one product feature, and within those vertical teams, like I said, you have product designers, blah, 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 and stuff within them. Now, but one of the biggest problems with this system is that you now have what we call silos. 5 years, 6 years into tech, you would start hearing people say things a lot around silos. We're solving silos, blah, blah. They're literally people who make their job and money from fixing silos. Again, just fixing silos in startups. Now, what we call silos is this. Who uses Slack here at work? You use Slack at work here. Okay, so good. Now, what happens in silos is this. So because I'm in the checkout team, we maybe have like a channel for checkouts, and we have our conversations within that channel in Slack. Now, the conversations within the checkout team is limited to the checkout team. Do you do stand-up at work? Who does stand-up at work here? So the checkout team can be like, hey, we are synchronous, we don't do checkout. So we don't do stand-up. So in my company currently, I work on the message integrations team, integrating with platforms like Twilio, Infobip, and the likes. And my team is very asynchronous because we have engineers all over the world. We have engineers in the US, we have engineers I think we have engineers also in Australia, we have engineers in Europe. So because we are like in various time zones, we don't do stand-up. So we are very asynchronous. Now, there are other teams that are based in the US. There are other teams that are based in different time zones. So they have stand-ups. They have meetings every day. Now, the problem with this is that you now have siloed processes. So within my team itself, because within my team, we don't have stand-up, if I move to a different team where they have stand-up, I'm going to experience friction. Because now it's a different process. I have to get used to meeting my colleagues every day for 15 minutes because I'm currently working in a team where we don't have stand-up. So that's what we call siloed processes. Now, another problem, depending on how much autonomy you give to your vertical teams, is that one team could be like, hey, I'm about to use like a technical term, but just work with it. So one team could be like, hey, we use Redis here for cache. And I said technical because we have designers here in the house, not because it's a really technical term. Now, so a team could be like, we want to use Redis for cache. And the other team could be like, hey, no, we want to use Memcache. A team could be like, we want to use Postgres. And the other team could be like, hey, we want to use MySQL. Now, the problem with that is when this team is working on Postgres, over time, they would have learnings from using Postgres. They would understand how Postgres works, the bottlenecks of Postgres, and how they can stretch Postgres. But this other team is also having their own unique learnings in MySQL. So you have siloed information sharing. So companies, each of the teams vertically are learning based on the processes and structures they are using. But the learnings they're having cannot be shared across the organization because it's siloed. So it's only between here, it's only here. Now, unfortunately, and this happens in companies, if everybody in a team leaves the team, everybody in a team just gets jobs in other teams and they leave that team, it's hard for anybody from another team to manage that team because their process within that team itself is siloed. So that's like one of the pitfalls of having cross-functional vertical teams. Now, because of these pitfalls, which is mostly siloed conversations, siloed communication, siloed processes, we now add another layer, which is that we now have horizontal teams. So basically what you do is that you have horizontal teams here, then you now have vertical teams on top. Are you guys still with me? So now the vertical teams work on the horizontal teams. So an example of a horizontal team, now Vertical teams, like I said, are based on product features. So checkouts, billing, product marketing, blah, blah, and stuff. But when you come to like horizontal teams, what you're not having is backend team. Are you guys with me? Then you're like the front end horizontal team. Then you're not having maybe something like the product design horizontal team. Depending on how complex it is, you can group vertical teams together and you can be like, hey, okay, so we're going to have an horizontal team called integration. So the integration team is going to maybe handle checkouts. The integration team is also maybe going to handle things like chargeback, integration with payments provider. So like all the vertical teams that are integrating with external services have an horizontal team under them. Are you guys with me? Now, why do we do this? I know I'm actually glad that you guys are following up with me. So thanks very much for following up with me. So one of the major reasons why we have horizontal teams is the fact that when you have horizontal teams, you can enforce principles. You can enforce engineering practices within vertical teams. So like I said before, one of the problems with vertical teams is checkout team could be like, hey, we want to use Postgres. And the guys at catalog could be like, hey, we're not using Postgres, we don't like it, we're going to use Vitess or MySQL. The product designers here could be like, so we like to use Figma, we like to do colors, blah, 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 and stuff like this. These other guys could be like, hey, no, we don't like to use Figma, we want to use Sketch. Now, but the moment you have like a UI design team, the UI design team could be like, okay, so fine, everybody's going to use Figma, everybody's going to use these structures when you're using Figma, everybody's going to use this process for iterating through design, getting feedback and all. Now, on this foundation and this standard, you guys can now build. Are you guys with me? So we could say, basically, like the message integrations team could be like, so everybody that is building external integrations with partners and stuff like that would most likely have to use maybe a message queue for blah, blah, blah. No. Everybody must use webhooks. If you have used Spacestack before, then you'd have heard the word webhooks. And the guys in Get Convoy spoke about it when they did their keynotes. Yeah. So that's the reason why we have like horizontal teams. And this is a tangent from my talk today, but I'm just going to share it with you. Everything you do in startups is trade-offs. And it's the easiest way for you to fight imposter syndrome. And I'm just going to do this. This is a tangent. So trade-offs in the sense that we make decisions and those decisions have their own demerits. And often we just live with it. So the idea is usually this: when there is a bad outcome at the end of the day, don't be angry at yourself, because the fact was that you made a decision based on the information or knowledge available to you. So because of horizontal teams, we have a trade-off, and I'll explain the trade-off now. So let's say the guys in checkouts want to integrate with crypto, and most of the crypto providers don't use webhooks, but they really need to integrate with crypto. So they go meet the message integrations team, and they're like, hey, we need to integrate with crypto rails, blah, 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 no. And the crypto providers don't use webhooks. And you guys have said that the standard for blah, 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 blah has to be webhooks, but we cannot use webhooks. Now, the problem here, have you ever been in a situation where you drop a message in your Slack group asking for an answer and nobody answers you for like 3 hours or 4 hours? You've been there. How about 2 days, 3 days? Has it got into 3 days? Who is 3 days? Okay, I've done like 1 week. Like I've done mine, I just went into like a bottomless pit. So yes, so that's what happens when you have horizontal teams. So the guys in checkout reach out into the Slack group of maybe the message integrations team, and they're like, hey, hi guys, we want to do blah, 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 and we feel that we need to do this, blah, 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 blah. And nobody sees the message. Now, let's say the manager of the checkout team that was thinking of integrating with crypto rails was actually rushing. They wanted to experiment, see if they can just integrate with crypto very fast, get feedback from it, and see if they can now push it up to stakeholders to get approval. Remember, I said you're working in a different domain. It's not just 10 people within a room now. You now have like customers that are paying you millions of naira per month. You now have employees of 100 people. You have an hierarchy. So you can't just launch a feature into the product without going through the hierarchy to get feedback. Now, unfortunately, that hierarchy itself is one of the biggest bottlenecks of experimenting in startups. But horizontal teams now add another bottleneck, which is you need the horizontal team to give you consensus before you can even do your experiment. So because you have to reach out to the horizontal team to get approval, you most likely cannot experiment, and it's sometimes can be very harder for you to move on in vertical teams. Now, another bottleneck you get from horizontal teams is And I've had this experience in a previous company before my current one, where the guy leading the horizontal team has used a framework for 20 years and he did not want to change. Now, there was like a new interesting framework that we could use and it would be faster, more performant and stuff. But because the guy who was leading the horizontal team did not like the framework, that was the end. We couldn't use it. There was literally nothing we could do. So these are like some of the pitfalls you have with vertical only and horizontal only. Now, the reason why I went through this process was to give you an idea of what you would face when you join a startup that's 100, 200 employees. One of the things engineers and or people joining startups need to be aware of is that you're not working with robots. You're not working with defined processes. You're not working with, even software itself often is not garbage in, garbage out. That if software was garbage in, garbage out, to a very large extent, we would not have jobs. The reason why we have jobs is because we write stuff, things happen in production, we have to go fix it, then something else happens and we have to fix it and we have to fix it and we have to fix it. So, and it's also in job application. So I was talking to a friend of mine today and he told me about an experience he had applying for jobs and stuff, and that he was getting like very, very good vibes from his HR guys, from the HR of the companies he applied to. And all of a sudden, like last week or so, nobody started responding. And the first thing I told him is December. And these are some of the things people don't consider in jobs. It's December. I'm tired. I don't want to work fast. I'm not ready to break things, push code for the rest of this year. I want to chill. I want to rest. I want to travel. My mind is thinking about trips to Dubai or trips anywhere. So I'm working because I have to work. So if anybody pushes work to me right now, expecting me to work very fast, the person would be on a very, very long term. So we need to realize when you join a startup, the people you're interacting with every day are human beings. For instance, a guy could break up with his girlfriend and that could ruin his mood for the rest of the week. And if you're expecting that guy to push feature for you for the rest of that week, it might be hard. A person could lose their family member and be sad and depressed for the remaining 1 month. So all of these things happen. And why most companies try and incentivize their employees to reach out, to say when you're having like emotional issues, most times people don't do it. So I just want you guys to know that when you're working in startups, you're working with human beings. You're working with people that are having like different experiences, different emotional positions every day. And you have to learn how to navigate all of these things. Now, since they say we have 10 minutes left, I'm going to jump away from what organizations should do and jump straight to what we should do. So initially, my plan was to talk to folks and give you an expectations of what your organization should be like. So you could probably use that either to go back to your organizations and make changes to the internal systems, or you could use it as a metric when you're having conversations with HR folks to determine which company you would like to work with. But we have 10 minutes left, so let's just jump straight into what you should do. Now, let's go back to my initial friend, Dami. Now, like I said, Dami has been working very, very hard, and she feels that right now she should have a promotion. She feels that like right now she should be in like a completely different place. She should, I don't know, she should maybe have more responsibilities. Now, if you're in Dami's situation, what should you do? First thing is this: you need to have a mindset of ownership. Are you guys with me? You need to have a mindset of ownership. Now, often when we talk about ownership in companies, there are usually two different directions. One direction is stock options, where companies give you options and stuff, but I'm not going to go into that. The other direction is individual ownership. Now, it depends on the kind of company you're working with. So everything I'm going to say here is built on the foundation that the company you're working with had the other part of my slides and they understand it and they're working towards building that kind of a culture. So if you get the learnings from here and you join a company and you find out that you cannot practice some of the things I'm saying, then you either need to change the culture in the company or probably change culture. So the first thing is imbibe a culture of ownership. And I'll give you a very simple example of a culture of ownership. Let me get my slide. All right, so imbibe a culture of ownership. So we are going to use our two examples. The example of the backend of the engineer that wants to make an improvement to an API contract, but the backend team maintaining it are not responding. We are going to also use the example of Dami. Now, when I'm owning the process, when I'm owning my growth, when I'm owning my work, the first thing I need to know at the back of my mind is, if I'm going to own the process, I need to provide context to the people I'm interacting with. Are you guys with me? So I'll give you an example, then I'll explain. I was supposed to explain, then give the example, but we start from behind and go forward. So I'll give you an example of how Dami. So my friend Victor, after listening to my talk, is going back to talk to the API team and wants to now navigate friction. So this is how Victor starts the process. So Victor starts a document describing the problem he wants to solve, his motivation, and possible approaches to changing the API contracts. Victor speaks to like backend engineers on his team to get context on the amount of work that would be required to change the contracts. Victor shares the document. Victor publicizes the documents and blah, blah, blah. No. So this is how I would approach it. So there's an API contract. I feel that I can improve the API contract. And if I improve the API contract, it would improve business value to customers. Now, I say it to this guy on the backend team maintaining it. And it's like, okay, I've heard. And he doesn't get back to me. He's not motivated. I feel frustrated and I stop. But that's not a sense of ownership. So the idea is this. I don't just want to tell the backend team to fix it. I want it to be fixed. I hope you guys get the difference. That's the difference between the person who owns product development in the organization. I'm not just sufficient with telling these guys to change or fix the button on the website. I want the button on the website to be fixed. If it's not fixed, I want to have a legitimate reason for why it's not going to be fixed. And the bottlenecks in between getting it fixed and getting that reason is not going to stop me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assume best intent. I'm going to assume that this guy didn't snub me. I'm going to assume that this guy is frustrated. I'm going to assume that this guy is tired. Or I'm just going to assume that that team has like a lot of work and they cannot attend to me now. Because I know that ideally my teammate is not going to snub me if my teammate was fine, I'm going to persevere. Are you guys with me? So I'm going to reach out. Now, but before I reach out, I need to make it easier for my teammates to make a decision on the change I want. So I'm going to sit back and I'm going to write. Now, one of the things I wanted to say initially is that one of the most important skills in the startup world is writing. And I'm going to make it my primary task to ensure that everybody here gets access to my slides. One of the most important skills you can have is writing. I tell you, it's not even writing code. I mean writing, communicating, being able to defend your position to your colleagues. Writing is the most important thing. And a startup to follow within the Nigerian ecosystem for that is Paystack. And your startup to follow globally is Stripe. These are companies that imbibe the culture of writing. So I would say from today, if you have a thought, if you have an opportunity to communicate to a friend by speaking, try to write first. Writing forces you to be more thorough. Writing forces you to think. So let's come back to my stuff. Now, I want to provide context to this guy because I assume that he was frustrated or tired, whatever the case may be. So I would sit down. I would think about the problem that I want to solve. I would think about why solving the problem is important to the business. And I'm going to write a document explaining that to him. However, I'm not going to write the document with the intent to convince him or to make him agree. I'm also going to write it with the intent to get feedback from him as to why he did not respond positively the first time. Are you guys with me? So I'm going to be like, hey, so yeah, we need to improve the API. We need to do this. We need to do this. We need to do that. And when we do all of these things, the API is going to be improved. I feel it's going to take us like 2 weeks to do it. I feel this is what we need to do. I feel these are the teams we need to reach out to. So I'm going to write that document. And at the end of the day, when I'm sending it to him, I'll be like, hey, so this is my intention. This is the output of my research around fixing this problem. What do you think about doing this? What do you think about we solving this and all? Now, in an ideal situation, when you send that, your teammate is going to see it, your teammate is going to respond, he's going to be excited and the likes. But we don't work in an ideal world. So I still expect some pushback. I expect that your teammates might not respond to you. So the next thing you do is give some leeway, go back again to your teammates. Now, when you find out that your teammates has become a bottleneck, the next thing you need to do is maybe reach out to somebody who has like more authority within your organization. Maybe reach out to your manager, not to report the person. Again, we're still assuming best intent. Now you are going to convince your manager who you feel has the authority to be able to own that process and get the work done. Now, when you reach out to your manager like, hey, I feel that we should do this. This is my document to solve this problem. You push it to your manager. And at that point, to a very large extent, it becomes your manager's responsibility. Now, your shadow responsibility is to follow up to ensure that your manager takes like the right step to get it done. The moment it's even given to the next team to work on it, you have less burden, but it's still your responsibility to follow up until the feature itself is implemented, or until somebody tells you, hey, we cannot implement this feature because it's a lot of work and we cannot invest in it right now. Are you guys with me? Now, which comes back to the talk of when navigating friction, you must understand and accept that the outcome for the team is more important than your own outcome. For instance, I'm not happy that I don't have my slides up. Like, I'm literally not happy about it. However, the outcome here right now is that everybody can listen to me. That's the most important outcome. So I'm going to prioritize it. Now, a person who owns stuff prioritizes the best outcome for the rest of the team, the best outcome for the rest of the organization, not just that it gets fixed because I raised it. Are you guys with me? Now, the easiest way for you within a company to be able to get your managers and stakeholders to listen to you is by helping more than you demand help. Are you guys with me? You help more than you demand help. So you actively build visibility within your organization. So in my organization, I've gotten awards twice, and this is not the professional word for this, but I'm going to use the word my first manager used. They said, you're the active shit umbrella of this company. Now, it sounds like a bad word, but the meaning of the word shit umbrella is this. You're the person who goes back, fixes tech debt, so people can focus on product features. So literally speaking, if I have 1 week at work free where I don't really have like a lot of work to do, I'm going to go back and look for ways to improve systems. I'm going to go back and look for documentations to update. I'm going to go back and reread documentations and just fix typos and stuff like that. Now, the more I do this and the more I share it, that, hey, I fixed this, I fixed that, I'm building visibility within my organization. So it's easy for me to just post that, hey, hi, I need somebody to jump on this thing to help me. People will feel compelled to help me because I've been helping the organization. Are you guys with me? So that's one of the very key important things people need to do. It's important to build visibility within your organization. So I said own things. Yeah, I've said own things, be aware that the outcome for the whole organization is more important than your intention. Then I've also now said to build visibility within your organization. So I'm going to end with solving Dami's problem. Dami is looking for a promotion, right? And I don't know, is there anybody here currently looking for a promotion at work or stuff? Anybody? Okay. You probably get there. Now, there was a Twitter space conversation recently where people were arguing that it doesn't make sense that the moment you're working with an organization where you have to fight for your promotion or you have to make the right steps you have to actively defend your promotion, you should leave the organization. It's a bad organization. Now, I feel that there are like two different things there. There is one where your organization actively doesn't promote you intentionally. Like, so it's a recurrent thing. You talk about it, you raise it, and nobody's listening to you. For me, you should leave the organization. But there is also the other one, and this is what I say about assuming best intent. And this is going to happen to almost everybody here when you join a startup. You're working with people, and because you're working with people, there'll be oversights. People will make mistakes. People will forget. I'm very sure some of us here have forgotten some of our friends that we went to high school with, guys we went to university with, guys we went to college with and stuff. So people forget. People get affected by a lot of things every day. So if you're in Dami's situation, the first thing you need to do is sit down and articulate why you deserve your promotion. Get somebody within your organization, like I said, build visibility within your organization. Get somebody within your organization who has enough repute to move and convince stakeholders within your organization to listen to you. And follow through with the person to get everybody within your organization to give you the promotion or the responsibilities you deserve. So to end, what I want to end with is this. Everybody here needs to be aware of one fact. When you join startups, you're working with humans. And when you're working with humans, you need to expect friction. If you're on this earth, things will happen. Literally anything can happen. And when you see friction, the first instinct should not be to be frustrated. The first instinct should be to find ways that you can navigate it. The first instinct should be to find ways that you can convince the person who is causing that friction that, hey, this friction exists and these are ways you can solve it. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Who has the mic? Okay, so if you have more questions, you could probably just reach out to me on Twitter. Unfortunately, no slide, no Twitter handle.
I was wondering if you could summarize the part of what the organization can do. You know, you skipped it to talk about how what we as individuals can do. Then the question I have is concerning your suggestion is that developers or teams should be in both the horizontal and vertical. Is that correct? Like, I maybe if I'm a front end developer, for example, I would be in a front end horizontal team and also in, say, the checkout team as a front end person. Is that what you're suggesting?
Okay, no. So I was just explaining how the common strategies that companies use to structure employees when they become that big. But by default, when you work in an organization where they have vertical teams and also have horizontal teams, you'd still be a member of the horizontal team and your vertical team. So horizontal teams are usually around function. So like front-end engineers in an horizontal team. Vertical teams are around product features. So that answers it. So, well, for the first question, I'll make the first one your question itself, which is what organizations can do. So for me, the key thing is organizations should incentivize ownership within the organization itself. So incentivize ownership, give employees the opportunities for them to own their process, for them to own their work, for them to own their growth within the organization. So build those structures to allow employees feel that they have enough autonomy and enough context and idea about what you're building and solving, that they can make the right decisions, they can move forward, they can take initiative without always having to reach out to someone before they can make a decision. So make your processes clear. And I'll just end with this. So if in your organizations you guys paint, rather than say when you want to paint, go meet XYZ, you tell you what you need to do, have a document that states what's the requirements for painting, and also have a document that states who can paint. So be very, very clear and explicit with your process. So that way you reduce the need for people to have to depend on other people to move forward or to take initiative. So I'll just summarize what I was about to say for organizations as that. I guess that's all. I'm not allowed to take more than one question. So you guys can if you have more questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter. My username is Ayo_Aregbede. So just reach out to me. Thank you. Have a nice day.